world's full of idiots. Do you know what this dummy just did?
Oh my God, you're not gonna believe this. Did you hear about Annie?
She was promoted so long ago, she wouldn't even know how to work this CAD system.
Your shift partners are supposed to help you, not throw you under the bus.
Who does she think she is trying to tell me how to do my job? All she does is sit at her desk.
Wow, really? Here we are in communications and we don't even talk to each other.
My kids are opening Christmas presents without me there again.
Mandatory overtime again? I wish they would schedule right.
I've worked so much overtime, I'm gonna call in sick tomorrow so I can have a day off.
I've been on graveyard for 3 years. I'll never see the light of day.
Jim works days and I work graves. We pass each other like ships in the night, but we make it work.
You have to pick up the phone to 911, whether your child is injured or someone is dying or whatever. You pick up the phone, call 911. Who do you envision on the other end of that line? Is it somebody who's emotionally capable of taking that 911 call? Who do you want that person to be? Is that you?
I hear a lot of negative self-speak in dispatch centers. What has helped me in my life is nobody talks as much as I talk to myself. So what I say to myself is going to be pretty important in how I'm going to view the world and how I'm going to project myself to others. I want the people that work in our centers to recognize that that's not a sign of weakness, and they have an obligation and a responsibility to themselves to be clear and to ask for help.
We are prepared to talk about it. If it comes to the supervisor's attention, I'm not confident that all of us would be assertive in finding out what's going on with our employees. I'm also not confident all of us know what to do. I think that's a harsh reality. I think we have, as organizations, have set our supervisors up to fail because we don't have the same leadership training. We certainly don't have human resource training. Someone may say, hey, this is a policy and here's a phone number to call for help. Beyond that, we're powerless. Part of it is our responsibility to seek that information out so that we can be effective leaders in our organization. The other part of it is that we need to do that paradigm shift where we are empowering our people and not just make it a word. We need to acknowledge the fact that not only we are a major part of the problem, we are the solution.
The term, "you're just a dispatcher," has actually kind of become a badge of honor because we do so many things, and that word means so much. Let them be the dispatcher. Let them take those inherent abilities and help themselves and their coworkers just like they help the public.
The dispatcher is the first responder. When someone calls 911, the voice on the other end of the line is vitally important to them. I'm Mark Bailey, and I'll be your host. As a dispatcher, what you bring to that phone call can literally be the difference between life and death. What you do is incredibly valuable, but can be incredibly difficult and stressful too. Many dispatchers suffer from stress-related challenges, relationship problems, and career difficulties, and symptoms of PTSD. The dispatch culture has been a problem too. 97% of sworn officers retire as an officer, while only 3% retire as a dispatcher, and many leave during the first 5 to 7 years. The purpose of this video is to get you thinking about how you can make a difference to your career, your work environment, and your mental health. And it's also to start a dialogue about what the job is and what it could be. The goal of this program is to increase your awareness to the aspects of the job which can shorten your career and help you avoid them. In short, to help you have a long, healthy, well-adjusted career. The main segments in this training are uncontrollable factors, controllable factors, communication, taking care of our own, management and supervision, and the final thoughts from our subject matter experts. In the dispatch environment, there are many factors that are just part of the job and can't be changed. These factors include shift work, overtime, stressful situations, limited breaks, and working holidays, But just because the factors are not controllable doesn't mean that you don't have choices on how to deal with them.
My family's getting the turkey out of the oven right about now.
Who all's there?
Pretty much everybody, except for me.
And me. I want turkey too.
Me too. Dibs on the wishbone.
I don't want to be here right now. I'm actually beginning to hate the holidays.
Oh, you can't hate the holidays.
Just working the holidays. Can I hate that?
I guess, but you can't change it, right? Job requires you work holidays. It's just a part of it.
I know. They're all there. Oh, and the turkey.
Hey, in my family, we just celebrate on the day off. Copy that. We figure out a day that everybody can get together, and we just make that our special day. It's tradition.
We do the same thing. We actually celebrate the holiday before the holiday. Like for Christmas, the kids look forward for a visit from Santa before he actually visits anybody else.
Well, that's smart.
Look, you can't change the job. And if you spend your time mad at the things you can't change, it'll only get worse. So change the things that you can. A little creativity goes a long way.
I tell that to my mother and her creative stuffing. Ugh.
Okay, you've watched a video on the holidays. How many might have felt that way? Okay. When did you recognize that you were starting to feel like that?
Kind of like she did, right when you're looking at the clock and everyone's probably sitting down and you're not going to be there with them and you're missing out on those memories.
Okay. Do you remember at what point in your career that occurred?
Probably about 6-7 years. I would say that all the newness and everything's worn off by then and kind of getting a rut, and how I handled pulling myself out of it, and the people around me, whether they gave me good or negative advice about dealing with it. My family helped a lot too, because like the video, they were willing to do it on a different time or day or whatever to accommodate to my schedule.
So your family adjusted and you made concessions?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Is there something we can do to help make that transition for our peers?
Well, in our comm center, we tend to have potlucks for the holidays and, have get-togethers at work on the holidays. So I think that tends to help a lot for especially the newer dispatchers.
Regardless, it sucks to have Chinese food on Thanksgiving Day, but I was the first to tell you that. But it's nice to work with people that you enjoy. I think that helps a lot, to have to leave Thanksgiving at 12 o'clock and then go and work with coworkers and have at least a good day and have a fun Thanksgiving Day. I think it makes it easier to make that transition.
I think family and friends are a priority. I mean, that's human nature, I would think. Most people don't understand shift work. It's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And now we have these variety of 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, mandatory overtime. So in a sense, I think it's almost our responsibility, in a sense, to adapt to the normal, their normalcy. I think it's right? I just don't think people understand shift work.
Do you think it's really important the way you approach it? Do you think that your attitude really kind of plays into how enjoyable your career is with these issues that we really just can't control? Our friends being like normal people and the holidays.
Well, your attitude starts when you're thinking about going to work. And I kind of like to talk about sizing up the day. As soon as you wake up, you're already thinking about work, what time you have to be there, how long do I have before I get to work. So depending on that attitude when you're even thinking about it is probably going to reflect how you react throughout the whole day.
I think you can choose to poison the environment, or I think you have a choice to bring people up
especially on the holidays, nobody goes into work wanting to work. They want to be with their families. So if you decide to be negative on that day, it'll really bring down those who are also sacrificing just like you.
So do you really think it's our responsibility to be the caretaker of our peer?
Most definitely.
If you don't want, because then it'll just snowball and everybody will be pissy.
The environment is the responsibility of the dispatchers. Is that so? Okay. So even if the person has a difficult attitude, do we give up?
We just had this conversation yesterday about how this job, you can be negative, but we get paid really good for doing what we do. And if we find people being negative about it, they need to be reminded of what they're doing and how important it is and what they could be doing if they didn't have this job.
What happens when a new person enters the comm center? Does anybody give them any advice regarding all these issues?
Yes.
And the need for friends and outside the profession?
I think sometimes, unfortunately, it's the negative Nellies that get to them first, it seems like. But I went to a class where you can't eat your young, but I feel like we as dispatchers, I don't know why we do that. I mean, I have to work with these people, and in order to allow me to have days off and not have to work mandatory overtime, I want to get to that new person first and tell them what a great job this is. Been doing it for a long time, and I love what I'm doing.
Well, the content matter of our job is so negative already, and if you allow the negativity of others to, pervade your space, I think it's just going to overtake the environment altogether.
Well, being new and one of the young people that the old people eat, I had a really good experience because my coworkers that I got to work with taught me to keep it light. And the hardest part for me was going from, the 4-year-old that's not breathing to this duck is in the parking lot and he looks really stressed out. So I've learned that you've got to be able to move from this call to this call and be able to keep it light and laugh with your coworkers and not get so caught up on each separate thing.
I think that helps. And then also going back to the negative Nelly, the person who always wants to be negative, sometimes you can try and approach them. Other times take the wind out of their sails and we're just not agreeing or not participating in that conversation. Then they can stand up and say what they want and no response. Well, I'm gonna sit back down. And then you can carry on with your discussion of something else.
What kind of self-talk might be helpful when you're dealing with things that it's beyond our control?
I think also if you notice yourself getting negative, so it is noticeable to yourself, because a lot of us don't notice when we ourselves are getting negative. But if you are noticing it, then make a concerted effort to find something that you do like and remember that and talk to yourself about that and try to get that to be the overwhelming thing rather than the negativity.
Yeah. So ultimately, it's everybody's responsibility for the environment and dealing with what we have to deal with.
I think sometimes it's validating just to complain for the sake of possibly hearing, that your other coworkers are in the same boat as you, that they've been there at one time, they have experienced that, and that they can either give you a technique for dealing with it or that they just understand you and they hear you, and sometimes that's enough to kind of get you past that slump.
I love the fact that this particular dispatcher had the support of those she was working with.
That was always very frustrating for me. As a supervisor, I could see something was wrong, it needed to be changed, but it was an uncontrollable factor and I couldn't change it. In situations like that, you just have to be there for them.
We are fixers. When we go to work as a dispatcher, that's what we do. We fix things. We fix, you need this, you need that, I'm going to fix it for you. These are things we can't fix. And when you can't fix them, it's a part you can't control. That out of control feeling or that inability to fix something can really, really eat at you.
How we react to those uncontrollable things is what's going to make the difference in how long we are able to stay on the job and do it effectively.
Generally, you're working in a poor environment. There's no windows, no fresh air. Sometimes it's very cramped spaces. Sometimes the lighting is not that great. You have these strange work schedules. Often there's a lot of overtime.
Stress for dispatchers, it's being inside a lot. There's no such formal break. You can't run to the store on your 30-minute lunch break and pick something up.
And you are the first point of contact for people who are in crisis.
After about 5 years of that, I feel like it was really taking a toll on me, not just psychologically, but physically too. You know, we developed these horrible physical habits as dispatchers to compensate for what's happening to us psychologically.
Very early in my career, you had the culture where you sucked it up. You didn't get any sympathy. To where we're migrating, where, okay, we're all away from our families, let's share this day together. I'll bring the turkey, you bring the potatoes.
When I started, you had to earn the right to be spoken to, basically. People wouldn't accept you as a coworker or as a friend until you had passed probation or passed training, because a lot of people don't make training. We want to protect ourselves from being vulnerable, getting to know somebody, and then have them leave in the next week. I was sitting in the ComCen, and I looked across the room and I saw this girl that had been working there for probably 3 or 4 months. And I recognized her, but I had no idea what her name was. And that really bothered me, that I was that disconnected from my work that I couldn't even figure out who that girl was. I then made it a point that anytime somebody was hired, that I would turn around and introduce myself at my first opportunity and talk to them for a moment to get to know them. By having that initial interaction with someone who's new, introducing yourself, they may not remember your name, and I may not remember theirs right away, but being able to recognize that face and go, oh, I remember I talked to that person, and 3 months later, when she has a question, she can turn around and say, hey, I need to ask you a question. Yeah, absolutely, makes it way more easy.
Once you find one person in a dispatch center who's acting that way, I think that as soon as other people realize that it's okay for me to behave this way, it's okay for me to show this level of compassion to my coworkers, it spreads. Because for the most part, we like each other. Not everybody, but most of the people in my dispatch center, I'm extremely fond of. My dispatch center is fully staffed, which is like something that's unheard of in California. And we still have forced overtime. Not a lot, but occasionally.
And it's very frustrating for our new people, and they want to work, you know, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And I've seen a lot of really good people come through that can do the job very well, but the hours aren't conducive to their life. And you have to be willing to make that sacrifice. And I think it's worth it.
I worked so much overtime in my first 10 years. I bought a house on my own as a single parent.
I think in the dispatch industry, there's so much variation in promotional opportunities from agency to agency. So I would really encourage someone who knows that they want to promote in the field to be very strategic about it and to recognize that in order to promote, more than likely they are going to have to go to a number of different agencies.
Unlike other responders, you know, dispatchers are with each other, you know, for their entire shift. They don't get a break from each other. So when you can create that positive kind of co-creative environment where we're actually helping each other rather than, you know, bringing negativity to the comm center, that's a real plus. And that's one of the things that can actually reduce stress, because stress is 80% our perception, 20% the outer event. And it's our perception of how much control we feel like we have. So if we can empower ourselves to take control in a positive way, in an affirmative way, and also by helping each other, it's going to cohese that comm center, and we're going to be a true team, both on and off the bad calls.
While many factors are not controllable, there are a lot of things you do have control over. You decide your attitude, your work preparation, your food and drink options, even how you answer the phone. You probably have a lot more input into the quality of your day than you think.
Hey. God, I hope this week's better than last week. Just one screwed up mess after another. I swear after a while I just want to rip my headset off and throw it on the ground.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to Kim's birthday party tomorrow. I'm bringing an ice cream cake. So good.
Yes, sir. I understand, but it's really not that big of a deal. Okay, yes, I'm sure it's a big deal to you. Are you kidding me? Oh, sorry, sir, I'm not talking to you. Look, it's a parking ticket. It happens. Just pay the fine and get over it.
I told Pa, show you're clear.
Can you believe I have to work late tonight? I mean, what's the point of making any plans if they can just ruin them like that?
I'm sorry you have to work late. That's the job for you. It's all clear.
Dispatch 7 Paul, rolling reg, 7 Sam, Adam Mary 021 on a white Chevy.
7 Paul, copy.
7 Paul, I've got a failure to yield west on 3rd, crossing Juniper, white Chevy Camaro with 2. He's now north on Lemon.
North on Lemon, copy. Crap, what's that plate?
Dispatch, did that plate come back to a Chevy?
Tina, I ran it. It's clear on a 2014 Chevy. It's in your call.
Confirm. It's clear on a 2014 Chevy. Confirm your cross with Lemon.
Still northbound Lemon approaching Cedar. Are you sending me cover?
Affirm. I show 5 Paul en route.
Okay. Any comments?
She sized up her day walking in to work. And so she's trying to set the tone, but her coworker is still there for her because we still need to work as a team.
So the one that had the roller, let's talk about her. Where did she go wrong? Or did she go wrong?
It came across as that she was tired to me, so maybe if she's a little hemmed up about working so much and she doesn't have activities outside or she's not feeling energized, that perhaps her being caught off guard had to do a little bit with her being tired.
Okay. So what are we going to do with her?
Or maybe just talk to her and find out what's going on. Why are you so distracted? What can we do to get you back on track, kind of a thing.
Okay.
Because maybe she doesn't even realize that she's being that negative.
What about going to the supervisor? Is that an option? I love your reaction.
Oh. I mean, I'm a big advocate of leaving the supervisor in the office. So I never want our issues to go there because it shows that we can't handle it amongst ourselves. So I'm very big on never going to the supervisor.
But I think if it persists, I mean, you can only let it go on so long before it's really affecting everybody. If it doesn't change, then the supervisor might have to be involved. It doesn't mean it's discipline. It's just, hey, this person is affecting our work environment.
I think it goes beyond just the workplace as well. I mean, you've got people calling in, and to you, that traffic ticket might not seem like a big deal, but to the person calling in, that's the most important problem that they're experiencing, and it's a legitimate problem to them.
Because of the behaviors that were identified, do you think that that would be appropriate or inappropriate to bring it to the supervisor's attention?
I would probably go to her directly. You know, if you need some time off, it would probably be a good time to go and talk to the supervisor, see if you can take a personal business day. I would probably go to her to advise her to go to the supervisor about a problem maybe she doesn't want to discuss with me or something I can't help with. And then on the supervisor's end, I feel that as a supervisor, you're supposed to be looking out for your team. So when someone comes in looking disheveled and looks exhausted and doesn't look like they have it together, then that's something a supervisor also should observe, just like we observed it all. So that's something the supervisor should think about also.
Okay. What options do we have to make that the best experience in the comm center?
I say it's an investment. You're actually investing in yourself when you are a team player and you're looking out for your coworkers, because that day that you come in and you're a little off or you're a little down, then that's their opportunity to kind of repay you for what you've done to them before. But if you're always staying to yourself, then those days you might need your coworkers, you'll still be by yourself.
Have you ever had that feeling, I just can't care anymore?
I think you get really desensitized. So, okay, I've been here for, 14, 16 hours. This is my fourth pursuit now. Okay, go ahead. So what you might have done on your first one of the day can be different from what you did on your fourth, because now you're desensitized and now it's not exciting and now you've already done it. So go ahead. Okay, I got that. Copy. So I think it changes a lot, and same with your phone calls. I've already done all of these things today, so this is not exciting to me, or exciting or whatever it is, even though it should be.
So we don't end up with the fatigue, the compassion fatigue, the just mental fatigue.
Break it up a little. Have them, take a break, walk around, get some fresh air kind of a thing and come back to it. Or maybe if it's a matter of call taking versus dispatching, maybe switch so you're doing something different.
Yes.
I like to treat myself to something on my extra long days. So on my normal days, sometimes I won't get a treat. I'll save it for those days I have to work mandatory overtime. So that 15-hour day, the last 5 hours, I have something to look forward to.
So you splurge on the ice cream? Okay. Anything else we can do maybe before we come into work?
Try to get some exercise in before you come in, and it helps with your energy level, especially if you potentially are going to work a long shift.
Sometimes when we bring new people into the division, into the comm center, they're not treated very warmly. Why do you think that is occurring? What can we do about it?
Well, one, I think that the thought is that, well, they don't know the job yet, so they really don't know what they're doing. But I think a mentorship program, I think when you take a veteran and you pair them up with that new person, basically they have someone to go to share something with.
I think when I was new, I felt that part of it was they're waiting to see if I'm going to make it through the probation period. And then maybe, if she makes it through, then we can have a relationship because she'll still be here.
But I think it goes back to how our shift sets the tone. It goes back to sizing up the day when we walk in the door. When we have the new dispatchers come in, we want to set the tone that this is a great place. How to get to that point, I think it goes through our training and our briefing training that we're having. I think it goes through supporting each other. It's recognizing, bringing that humanity back into our callers. And I think consistent training like this so that we have that reinforcement as well.
I'm going to ask one more question. What are we willing to do to improve the culture in the comm center?
I think we each need to also take responsibility for our own happiness, so to speak, and positivity, and making sure that it's coming from us as well, and not just expecting others to make us happy.
Nobody else knows what I'm going through in my calls than he does or than she does. Granted, you're still getting kind of lost in your calls and all of that, but I can still turn around to him and go, wow, that was a really bad call, that really sucked. And he's gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. Nobody else is we may not know our personal lives, and I may not know what he did on Tuesday night, but at least nobody else is gonna understand that better than he is. He at least knows that part of my brain, and especially because I'm new, most of my brain is dispatching. And so at least the people I work with know most of where my stress comes from and what's going on in my head and how that feels.
You can tell that when she's coming through the parking lot that she's really not ready to come to work. Her hair is all a mess. She's got her clothes messed up. She's carrying every bad snack you can think of. Her big gulp soda sitting there.
So from a supervisor's perspective, if I see an employee that way, I have a choice to make. I can either accept that's just how that person is, or I can inquire further. And how are you doing today? Or maybe it's addressing their uniform standard because they're not in compliance with policy. Often, though, it's much easier to ignore it because most supervisors, I think most people, aren't prepared to have a crucial conversation with anyone. We want to avoid conflict at all costs. But what we fail to realize is that conflict creates friction, and if you make that a positive friction, that's how you affect change. It's completely appropriate to reach out and to have a conversation with them before you put somebody in a situation where their safety is in jeopardy. Quite frankly, that's usually when we become involved, when it becomes an issue with your job performance. But if you're keyed in, if you're actually paying attention to the people that you're working with, it would never get that far.
Everybody has bad days and everyone has good days, but you have to be able to have a little bit of disconnect when you come into work. It's so important that your focus is there because of the work that we do. She's not responding to his problems, she's responding to all of her problems and projecting it onto him. And that's causing his reaction to then escalate.
A lot of times we feel sorry for ourselves, or we feel disconnected, or we feel slighted, and we don't own our part in it. And that takes a lot of thoughtfulness and courage to just own it. And unless she says something, or unless a coworker says something, you're kind of just breeding this toxic culture.
Showing the state of mind that she was in, and her coworker still helped her. And it showed that they were frustrated with her, and it took her missing the radio traffic, I think, for her to realize that she's probably in a bad place.
The people that I think are the most professional and well-equipped have a consistent repertoire, if you will, of behavior. One of the things that they do is they come to work prepared. They seem to have a mental picture already in place about how their day is going to go, and it goes that way.
Before I go to bed, I prepare myself to know that tomorrow I'm going to work. It's all about making sure that you're prepared to do what you know is coming. You're going to probably hear some horrific thing that day. If you don't, well, you score. If you do, you've prepared it through. You've worked it through in your mind already. I'm going to take that on, work it through, take my next call.
We answer the phone. People yell at us all the time. Officers yell at us. Whoever yells at us, people are angry. But it's never about me, Susie. They're in crisis. They're frustrated about their situation. And it's very important to keep that in the back of your mind, because we do feel responsible, or we do feel attacked. I'm that voice of reason. I'm that problem solver now. This is what I get paid to do, to help them, de-escalate them.
So I had chronic tension headaches, ulcers, anger and frustration, a very short temper, which was spilling out into my relationships with coworkers, as well as supervisors, as well as on the line.
If it feels really like your adrenaline is high, there's techniques like to feel your feet on the floor and to wiggle your fingers just to get the blood going. I don't want to say that I meditate necessarily, but I'm a huge proponent of it, because I think we all, whatever you call it, prayer, meditation, whatever it means to you, you need that time. Your body needs that quiet. It's super important in a career like this to take that moment to reflect, to think about yourself, to be aware of your body, to be aware of who you are. And if we never stop, we never get time to kind of refuel.
It can change. Within 6 months of finding the practice of, first of all, the practice of breathing and being still. You can call it meditation, you can call it whatever you want, but it's really about taking time for myself, for 10 minutes each day to just breathe. 6 months from that, the day I started doing that on a daily basis, my life was completely different. I was more available to my friends and family. I was much less short with my coworkers and callers. Every caller I was able to be much more present with.
The supervisors need to be present with the dispatchers on the floor. They need to be present in the moment and understand what's going on their floor and what's going on with their people.
I actually make it a habit of talking to my team, and it's 5 minutes. I do a routine once a month. It's not something I do all the time, but it's, hey, it's my day to talk to you. What that does, though, it takes the negativity out of, hey, let's talk in the office. And it's their time. What's going on with you? That's literally what I say, hey, what's going on? And we talk about their goals. They may talk about their kids. It's beneficial to me because now I know if something's going on. It also helps me keep them on track professionally for their goals and that we're on pace. And they know that someone cares about them, both as a professional and as a person.
We have an epidemic in dispatch centers of people that are not taking great care of themselves. And I've been there and I understand, and I just want to encourage people that it does make a big difference.
It really portrays the fact that we never stop helping each other. When it came down to it and she missed the radio traffic because she was so self-involved in a negative way, her partner took care of her.
As the events get more critical, again, those dispatchers that have that level of professionalism, they seem to have a way to settle themselves, if you will, a way to take a deep breath and to recognize that this situation, while it's very intense, is not going to last forever, and that they can be very purposeful about how they choose to react in that situation.
Instead of going right into the next call and taking the frustration from that call into the next call, just by taking a moment to take a deep breath, feel my feet on the ground, and release that frustration and release that tension in the body, I can put myself back on ready, take the next call without that baggage.
You can just move on, just take that moment. It might not go well, but the next moment is your choice. Every moment after is your choice. Every day after is your choice. We're human beings, and we do make decisions the best that we can, and we are going to make mistakes, and no one's perfect, and you have to allow yourself those mistakes. While in our business, it's sometimes life-altering if you make your mistake. That's all the more reason to keep yourself healthy and honed in and really present in your job to the best of your abilities.
Dispatchers are communicators. You communicate with callers, officers, family, and friends. All too often, dispatchers avoid communicating with the people they spend the most time with, their coworkers. With all of the stressors and difficulties of the job, it might be a good idea to consider communicating with one another and encouraging others to communicate with you.
Sorry I'm late.
No problem, Kathy. There's nothing going on. Hey, how's your mom?
Oh, she's okay. Doctor said she just has to take it a little bit easier, but she still wants to do all the things she's used to doing. She still wants to take a walk, but she's not remembering enough to let her out the door, so it's just kind of tense.
Yeah, that's got to be frustrating for her and for you.
Yeah.
Stop me if I'm butting in, but I really think that you should tell your situation to Tina.
I don't think so. I don't think it would help.
From a work perspective, I mean, she really should know, and she can help you with your schedule, maybe lighten up some of the pressure.
I don't know.
You've been working an awful lot, and you haven't had a break in a really long time, and that would be tough on anyone. Why don't you shoot her an email and kind of let her know what's going on, just a little of the situation?
Okay.
Promise?
Promise.
All right. right, have a good night.
Thanks. Oh, hey, you're in early.
Hi, Kath. Was it busy tonight?
No, it was actually very slow.
Well, I got your email, so I wanted to come in early so that we could talk.
Oh, wow, thank you.
Sure. You know, I've known you for a long time, so when I got the email, I knew that it was really important. And I wanted to find out, how's your mom?
Well, you know, she moved with us a couple of years ago after Dad passed, and she's just been acting really strange. I think it's dementia or Alzheimer's or something. So she has a doctor's appointment this week for some testing, and we'll find out.
Okay, good.
So anyway, I think I need to spend more time with her. I'm too young to retire, but then maybe that's something I should consider. I just don't know what to do.
No, I think I understand. I think I made it very obvious when my son passed away last year that I wished I had taken some more time off to spend with him. So I know that it's a very difficult decision to make. And are you thinking maybe about working reduced hours, or?
I don't know yet. I'm still exploring my options. I know that it's going to demand a lot of my time, and so I want to plan it now because I don't want it to affect how I am at work. But I know it's coming, and I just want to be smart about it so I'm not making a decision on a whim. You know?
No, I know, I totally understand, and I want to work with you, but you're right, the department's going to need kind of some ample time to work this out. So why don't I gather some research and we can maybe sit down and go over it and decide what your options are?
Oh, research would be great. I'd really appreciate that.
Sure. Okay, so I'll do some research and I'll get back to you in a couple of days, okay?
Great. Thank you so much.
And Kathy, I want you to remember to take care of yourself because that is really, really important, okay?
I will.
Okay. Hi, Kathy. I have some information for you. Why don't we go in here?
Sure.
This is a printout of from an aging parents and elder care website. They have some great articles here and a lot of resources listed that might help you. They even have a lot of checklists, and I know how you like checklists. We also have our employee assistance program. They're here to help you with family matters. They were the first resource that I went to when my son passed. So I think this could be helpful to you.
Oh, it's great. It just looks wonderful. After talking with you the other day, I was thinking that maybe I should consider an early retirement. What do you think?
Well, you know, Kathy, I'd really hate to lose you. But if you're really thinking about retirement, then I would talk to the retirement office first because they have some officers there that can help you weed through all of those options. But, you know, maybe in the meantime, you might want to just think about working part-time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I know that there's a lot of information here, and it might take you some time to weed through all of it, and I know it's a bit overwhelming, but if there's anything else that I can help you with, if you want answers to other questions or anything, just let me know and I can find it out for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
What struck you in that video?
It was good. She prefaced it well. You know, let me know if I'm intruding, stop me if it's too much, but I'm concerned. And then she went into it, which I thought was brilliant.
Okay. What if Kathy hadn't sent the email to the supervisor? Do you think that, again, going back to our responsibilities or our caring for each other, is there something that the other dispatcher could have or should have done if she hadn't?
Followed up. Hey, how did it go? Did you get that email out? Did you get some help? Is there anything I can help you with? Or if you're not comfortable, do you want me to talk to her? Or just definitely followed up and see what happened and where it went.
Excellent, excellent. Anything else? Any other ideas?
She could have potentially just mentioned it to the supervisor that she's caring for her mother, and she seems to have a lot of responsibility on her plate right now, and then let the supervisor go to Kathy and let Kathy divulge the information, not necessarily give details, but just kind of a heads up type of thing.
Why do you think Kathy was so hesitant to seek help from the supervisor?
I think a lot of times you're afraid that if you bring your problems up, the easiest solution for the powers that be is to get rid of you and not to delve in and to actually help you.
Okay. Could there be any other reasons that we don't seek help?
I mean, as dispatchers, we're always strong and everything, and I think we don't, it's just like we were talking about giving each other praise. I mean, most of us don't, we say we don't even want praise because we don't even know how to accept it. So we don't want to show our weaknesses.
So we don't want to show our weaknesses. Why is that?
Vulnerable.
Makes us vulnerable? What's our job?
To be strong for the people that are calling in and to help them solve their problems.
To help other people solve their problems? So our role is generally as a caretaker? Do you kind of see yourself as that? That we're the keepers or the caretakers of our community? Our officers? Our firefighters?
I think at times too we have kind of a skewed version of reality. When you think about it, we're listening to these grand problems that we may not even have in our own lives. And so to take an incident and compare it perhaps to your workload, it may seem minor, whereas a normal person might think that it's a bigger deal than that.
What do you think about the supervisor intervening? Was it appropriate, over too much, too little?
It was totally appropriate. It was great that she did that, I think. I think it was definitely appropriate that she was there, and I thought it was good that she gave her options and that she said, here's this or this or this, and she didn't push in any way, and she was supportive, and she said, you know, you're a great part of the team, but you do need to take care of yourself, and she could relate with her own personal experience, so I thought the supervisor did a great job.
Okay. Anything you would have done differently?
I think the supervisor did an excellent job, although I don't think that that's a typical response from any supervisor that I've dealt with. And I would be afraid to let them in on my personal life like that for fear that it would be used against me later.
Can you give me a hypothetical? How do you think having a parent with Alzheimer's might be used against you?
I think possibly in the time that you have to take off to care for the person, that you're taking too much time off. You're not with it when you are here because you're spending all this time caring for this other person, that you're not getting the rest you need and everything else. So it shows up as you're not able to do your job as well.
That's interesting. Anyone else feel like that?
Well, I think too, I think we as dispatchers, we recognize the overtime factor. So if I'm going to go part-time or I'm going to take family leave or whatever it may be, now it's affecting the rest of my shift. So you have that guilt factor as well. You have family that you need to take care of, but then we're going back to this is our other family, and now I'm affecting this family by all of this overtime. So you do feel guilty and on both sides of it.
If you are at home and you're struggling with something in your personal life, does it bleed over? Does it impact your job at work? Can it?
Yes.
If it does, then is it a personal problem anymore? Or is it now our problem?
I think it goes to trust. Is we trust each other when in the time of need, whether it be a pursuit or, hey, I'm getting held over, can I have food, to a trust of, I need to trust my peers and my supervisor to be able to go to them and say, hey, I have this problem, whatever it may be. So we need to build trust. Is that a difficult process? It can be.
And knowing that it's an option too, because I think it's also maybe a little bit of an old school mentality, and not that it's a bad thing per se. When you come into the ComSten, your outside life, you leave it at the doorway, you leave it at the gate. If you're having a bad day, you don't have a bad day in here because this is work. But to be able to say, well, but also, if you're having a personal issue and you need some time off or it is bleeding into work, you can come to me and you can talk to me and you can approach me about these matters and we can work together to get through it. So knowing that it is an option, maybe where other times it wasn't very clear.
And I think really it's important when we communicate, even if it's over personal issues, the more sincere communication we do with each other, the more options will occur and help us change the culture, make it a better environment so we're much more supportive of each other, not just when we're having a pursuit. I think that's important.
Sometimes there are circumstances that that weigh so heavy that we can't possibly see what we need to help ourselves.
Without her coworker saying, you really need to ask for help, she was just going to wing it and see what happens when it happens.
I think that scenario goes back, it harkens back to somebody's bucket filling up, and there needs to be different ways to deal with emptying that bucket. And I think she didn't realize that her bucket was full.
I mean, we're supposed to be really strong, independent, in control people, but in reality, everybody needs help sometime.
The junior dispatcher reaching out of her comfort zone, I think, goes back to the idea that you can lead from any position.
There's an ironic circumstance with dispatchers. They're caregivers, and they'll provide help to others. And when people call in 911 and they're begging for their lives, dispatchers provide that help, but they don't do the same for themselves.
It's not easy to approach your coworkers at times when you see that something's going wrong. But if you do it come from a genuine place of concern, most people would appreciate that.
It's difficult. Sometimes you don't know if somebody's going to receive that type of input well, or if it's going to be something that they just brush you off and, bark at you and you're done. So I just really appreciated that. But the other aspect that I really appreciated is that the person was encouraged to talk with their immediate supervisor.
To also be authentic in sharing her own story, but the other part of that is not saying, I have all the answers for you. Let's go through this journey together. These are some resources I use to help for me, but there may be more for you. And letting her know that she wasn't by herself, that her agency wasn't going to abandon her, that they were going to work through this together.
We should be there backing each other up. We should be in it together as a team all the time, not just when we have a bad call.
I think those conversations are not happening in control rooms. I think the more realistic version of that is someone is in distress, everybody knows it. Someone may say, hey, are you doing okay? Answer may be yes, we move on.
I think historically in the dispatch profession, we've always kind of prided ourselves on our invulnerability. In some strange way, that became a source of pride for people in the dispatching profession.
Change is going to start by one person, two people, a small group getting together and say, enough. We need to fix this. It's broken.
Now, over the last decade, I would think there's been a major culture shift, a major change in thinking that, yeah, we can do that. And that's why we burn out after 5 years. That's why we, people retire from stress after 15. That's why, we're all such unhealthy, unhappy people. So yeah, we can do that, but why should we? It doesn't have to be that way. Why should we treat ourselves and each other this way?
And I think if we felt safer to do that and weren't ridiculed for doing that, and the ridicule comes from a very insecure place, I think, and it also comes from a lot of hurt. And the kind of hurt I'm talking about is the work culture hurt where people are like, suck it up, we've done it that way for a long time. What's your problem? Maybe you can't do this job, to, yeah, but I don't want to turn into the grouchy person or the person who hates her job or the person who feels sick the whole way to work because I'm dreading being there. I want to be a person who feels like I'm healthy and I'm meant to do this and remembers why I'm doing this and remembers to honor the profession and honor our coworkers and honor ourselves.
The smallest things, like, when you've heard your partner next to you has just had a really horrible call. It used to be that there would be a real level of judgment if that person had to walk out of the room afterwards, if they couldn't just click back on and move right on to the next thing. Now, I encourage my partners, and I hope other people in the room are doing the same, to say, you know what, that was a really horrible call. Why don't you unplug and go outside? I got this.
You're going to have a happy, harmonious working environment. You will eliminate the compassion fatigue, and you will be able to retain your employees for a longer amount of time.
So I would, again, encourage the supervisors to build that kind of relationship where they're approachable and available to their staff. But sometimes it's a lot of these little things where you can have a small impact, and that small impact goes a long way. And, a lot of little things equal a big thing.
We put our heart above our fear, and we do, if we chose to do the right thing a little bit more for each other, including ourselves, I think that would alleviate a lot of the toxic culture in the comm center.
The first thing we have to do is let go of the old paradigm of I'm going to do it by myself. And how we do that is by acknowledging and then letting the dispatchers express, this is what's been hard. And this is probably the hardest part for the comm center to do. We have to flush out these negative incidents that have happened, and maybe things have not been done in the right way, and realize that we did the best as we could at that time with what we knew. But now we know better. Now we know there's a way to support each other.
Dispatchers are caretakers. You take care of callers, officers, family, and friends. All too often, dispatchers resist being taken care of. They see it as a sign of weakness. With all the stressors and difficulties of this job, it might be a good idea to consider taking care of one another and even letting others take care of you.
Hey, I heard you working that carjacking. That was pretty intense.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if I can keep doing this. Just not sleeping or eating right. The overtime is just killing me. I mean, I'm cranky all the time and on edge, yelling at my kids.
Oh, I've definitely been there, done that.
You're still here. What did you do?
Well, I ain't gonna lie to you. It wasn't easy. I had a lot of really hard days. And some were worse than others. But I realized I had to take control of me. Because there's so much here we can't control, right? We can't control the supervisors, we can't control the work shift, we can't control weekends and holidays. We can't control our coworkers, what they do, what they don't do. And we can't control the callers who call in. But we can control ourselves, and that's what I figured out. I gotta control me.
Yeah, but how do you do that?
Well, I took a realistic look at the job. It is 24/7. It is weekends and holidays. And what we do is really, really important. So I figured out ways to fix me.
Like what? I mean, what did you do?
I started journaling every day, and that helps a lot. And when I get really frustrated, I take a short walk. And I signed up for a yoga class. Stretching relieves a lot of stress. And all those things together, they're like baby steps that really helped a lot. But after a while, I knew I needed a little bit more because I wanted to be a CTO and a tactical dispatcher. And I knew if I didn't get a grip, I wasn't going to be able to do it with that state of mind. So I talked to a professional. And now I remember to start with me and to honor the profession.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you find somebody? Who did you talk to?
Well, I talked to a counselor who works with public safety, so she totally gets it. She understands what we're going through. And it was another peer support person who pointed me in the right direction.
Wow. Thank you. I really appreciate this.
You're welcome. Let's get out of here, okay?
Yeah.
You know, that yoga place is just down the street. It's not that expensive.
Let's
I
go.
think you'd like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The conversation in the locker room, how do you think that went?
It was good.
It was good? And her opening with the recognition that her peer did something well, and it was a tough thing. Do you think that the senior person was in the moment with her peer? Yes. Okay. What was your impression of what went on here? What do you think? Just give me your random thoughts or comments that might have been said that struck you.
I think it was brave of the senior dispatcher to say that she reached out and did counseling in the end to really help herself through what she was going through. And I think there's a stigma about that. And so that was brave in general. And to provide her with so many different options she can do about taking care of herself and making sure she puts herself on her priority list.
Okay, good.
I think in a culture where everyone's expected to carry their own weight, no one is allowed to break, that it was very brave for the senior dispatcher to let her know, hey, I've been there and everyone goes through this. Although the perception may be put out there that everyone is superhuman, it's not that way. Everyone needs some support. Everyone comes to a point in their career where they're going to need to take a step where they can remember themselves and remember what makes them happy outside of the job, so it doesn't just become about the job only.
It was good of the junior dispatcher to say, well, what does that look like? Because she kept prodding and kept asking further, more probing questions. Well, what does that mean? What are you talking about? What are your, what did you do specifically? Instead of just saying, oh, okay, I'll look into it. She asked more questions too, which was good.
Okay. Anything else that struck a chord with you in that?
The part about counseling, and like you were saying, it's that stigma. That's why we have that service available, and I think people do have that stigma, but if you can then relate to somebody, hey, I went through counseling, or I'm currently going through counseling, just for our day-to-day stressors we have here at work, it's not, I don't know why we think of it so negatively.
Well, I think she even made it even a little bit more appealing by saying she dealt with someone that knows law enforcement and understands, versus just going to someone that doesn't know the job. And she'll be able to tell a story and not have to explain the story for the therapist or counselor to understand. So I think that made it even more appealing, realistic to the junior dispatcher.
So once again, why do we not seek help when we need it, or when we think we might need it?
Because we don't think we need it.
Because we can't self-identify. Is that?
I think a lot of times it's that. It's like, or we should be able to handle this kind of a thing going on in our own brains.
We counsel people every day on the phone all day long. Why can't we fix ourselves?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. It's like, why can't we fix ourselves? Psychiatrists seek help. Her comments in that discussion, what did it do for the trust between those two?
It opened it up and it started a dialogue.
Okay. And part of the trust was built because of what she said?
I think it was the recognition of, I've been there. Okay. And good that the junior dispatcher was kind of intrigued, like, well, what does that look like? Because I don't know what I look like right now, and I'm a mess.
Is that a hard thing to do, to admit to? I'm a hot mess?
Yeah.
Because it's vulnerable on both parts. To be able to say, I'm a hot mess right now. I don't know what I'm going to do. But then also to say, and I was as well, to be vulnerable on both sides, to put it out there. Yeah, I did do this thing. I did go to counseling. I did, have to look for ways to fix myself as well.
And sometimes when you're overwhelmed, you can't think past your problem. So although maybe in another state of mind, there's peer counseling and you can suggest that, or there's, hotlines you can call or a peer support group. But when you're in the middle of your problem, maybe you can't think past that and you forget that there's options and you forget that there's other people that have been trained, other peers that have been trained that you can talk to and that can help you through that.
So is there a way that a peer can help you kind of recognize maybe if you're in need of some assistance?
Acknowledgement of what they're saying and how they're feeling, and the junior dispatcher actually thinking maybe she can't do this much longer. So I think that probably kind of turned her down a different road, and maybe she'll seek help and stay in this line of work.
I think along with the acknowledging, if you're seeing somebody that appears to be stressed out or having issues like that, but not verbalizing it, maybe just letting them know, it looks like you're having a tough time. I just want you to know I've been there if you want to talk about it, kind of a thing. And so that they realize that it's not just them. They're not the only one going through it.
Is this fairly common, do you think, in our profession?
It's not common for someone to say, I went to counseling. It's common for someone to feel frustrated, and it's common for someone to say, I don't know if I could do this. I'm kind of maybe at the end of it. That's common. But that interaction, I don't think is common.
Is that something that we want in our profession? How do we do that?
Well, being new, I remember when I was brand fresh, spanking new, you're surrounded by tough dispatchers, and just because everybody's feeling the same doesn't mean it looks like that. When you're brand new, everybody looks, they look like they've got it all together. And so I am not flexible enough for yoga, but hearing somebody say, yeah, I've been there too, makes a big difference, especially when you're new, because you go, wow, I'm really feeling stressed. This probably isn't for me. I'm probably not cutting it. So to hear somebody else say, no, you're fine, we've all felt like that too, or we still feel like that, or whatever it is, makes a big difference.
And our team has kind of 4 steps to healing and resolving stress: acknowledge, express, act, and celebrate. And these are 4 steps that kind of give a structure over the overwhelming chaos of emotions and thoughts that happen after a critical incident. We first acknowledge and validate your stress is natural. You're a normal person having a natural reaction. What's hitting you the hardest right now? You always triage stress, because if we try to deal with the whole incident all at once, we won't be able to do it. It's too big, it's too much. But if we take what's hitting you the hardest right now, we can all focus in on that. And then that helps us to get a little bit of control again. And being able to identify it, which for dispatchers is huge. When they can't identify and prioritize, that's what they're good at doing. So that question is so perfect for dispatchers. And then, what do you need right now to get through it? Do we need a good meal after work, or maybe you and I can go and have a coffee afterwards, or maybe we can go and watch a movie. And that kind of moves into the celebration step, because after we've done the action step, then we can move to the celebration, getting back hooked into what is still good in my life. This is still good. Even though this critical incident happened to me, this still works. This still is good. These are the people that I still love. And this is the job that I still am glad to come to on the next shift.
We are communicators, and I think one of the things we do to a willing ear is talk about it. Because you know what? When you have a call like that, you're going to rehash it and rehash it and rehash it. So if you can do it and do that immediate debriefing almost of it immediately with a coworker, my opinion is that we would save a lot of dispatchers who burn out.
Something that dispatchers often do is the what if. If I had picked up the phone 3 seconds sooner, if I had sent 2 units instead of 1, if this, if that, if only. And it's called magical thinking. It's trying to change an outcome that you have no control over changing.
So what happens is we take in stress through the 5 senses. So a dispatcher takes in stress initially through the auditory channel, because they're either getting a phone call or they're getting radio traffic. So that's getting the auditory channel. The minute the auditory information comes in, the dispatcher makes a visual picture of what is happening. When we make the visual picture, it is always going to be the worst case scenario.
We put in the pieces that we don't know, and then we don't know what happens. And so naturally, our minds want beginning, middle, end. And so we kind of create this story.
You have drawn out this picture that he's bleeding all over the place and there's, gore everywhere and it's a horror movie. When in reality, he got a BB stuck in his foot.
That's one of the reasons why dispatchers in beginning research is showing that they sometimes suffer symptoms, not necessarily a diagnosis, but symptoms of PTSD is because of that lack of closure. And it's stressful. And then you're off to the next call, and you have this call kind of lingering over here. You don't know, so your mind's still kind of processing it. And over time, that can kind of build up.
Those visions that they have actually create a deeper stress imprint than even the auditory.
It's nice that agencies are starting to include dispatchers in critical incident debriefings. Those really are important because you can process those feelings instead of letting them just sit with you.
So what our team has often found is that compassion fatigue is really about an energy leak that has happened that has depleted our responder of their energy. And so our team often calls it the infinity of giving and receiving. And so if we're constantly giving, but we do not allow ourselves to receive, we break that infinity energy flow of giving and receiving. And many times what happens is the less we are able to receive, the more depleted we become and the less we are able to give, and the less compassion we have for other people and the less compassion we have for ourselves. So by giving and receiving, we are keeping that flow going, and it actually gives us life, gives us energy, and gives us hope.
Instead of, how are you doing today? And then going right on into the next thing you're going to say, actually mean those words. How are you doing today? Wait for it.
Not to so much say, are you okay, but how are you feeling today? You look a little stressed. Tell me about it. And take it that extra step. Just being there to listen and letting them unload without taking on their burden can be very cathartic.
Once you talk about it, it's out there in the universe, it's real. It's no longer stored up inside of you all by yourself.
It's not the weak person that says, I need help. That's the person who's really strong.
I left dispatching because of compassion fatigue. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I did not unload the calls that had come to me over the course of 12 years. I very proudly carried them as my badge of honor of these are the difficult calls that I've had, and they caught up with me.
We're terrified that that's us. We personalize that behavior. And when we're honest with ourselves and we realize that there's no difference between us and the person who appears to be falling apart, we're just hiding it better. That's why we don't have those conversations.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if I have a bad call and I can go to the dispatcher sitting next to me and say, I gotta talk, I need 5 minutes, I gotta go for a walk, I need to go scream, whatever. Wouldn't it be great if we could all do that? I would still probably be on the job if I felt that I could do that.
There's a lot of resources available to dispatchers now, whether it be peer support, whether it be a chaplaincy, whether it be through a program offered through Human Resources. They're confidential. There's a certain number of free visits. I personally don't understand there is still such a stigma sometimes. And, especially in dispatching, I almost wish we could require mandatory, visits with a psychologist because it's just so vital.
Water, diet, exercise are all good things for basic stress management. When you start talking acute stress or chronic stress or post-traumatic stress, we all need more. We can't fix it ourselves. We need to work with a professional.
The long-term benefits of making a change like this: better relationships, better health. You enjoy your job. You look forward to going to work every single day, not just occasionally. You're better prepared and better able to help your coworkers and the public.
Management is not immune to the issues that affect dispatching. Managers and supervisors face uncontrollable factors, controllable factors, cultural issues, and more. Recognizing those factors and how they affect those around us goes a long way towards changing the culture.
Have you seen this? Yeah, I have. And when I first read it, I thought it was crap too. But I've had a chance to look at it from their perspective, and I can see why it's needed. Yeah, really? Why? Well, we are the first point of contact, and there's no one else that can gather this info. I know it's 2 additional steps, and that's tough for everyone. But it makes sense that we should do this.
Yeah, I can see where that makes sense. And ultimately, I have no control over the policy anyway. So why am I worrying about it?
Look, you bring up a good point. If it's difficult for us, it'll be tough for our staff. I'll send a message to the dispatchers with more info and background.
I can't believe they're going to make us do all this extra work. It's just more stuff that they want us to do.
Man, this is BS. They don't get paid enough to do all this stuff, and they keep adding everything for us to do.
When is it going to
So
stop?
I couldn't help overhearing as I walked by that you're upset about the policy.
Well, yeah, this is ridiculous.
Okay, I just don't understand why we have to do all of this extra work.
Yeah, I get that. I understand why some people might be upset by it. But there's value for the agency. Look, we can choose to be negative or upset, or we can choose to understand the thinking behind the policy. I just want you to know that Dave is sending an email with more background info to help explain why we're going in this direction. And in the end, this is a policy that we're going to have to follow. Is there any way that we can make this transition a little bit easier for the floor staff?
I think there's a shortcut, a command, or...
A function key.
Yeah, that give us less keystrokes.
Really? Well, let's take a look.
You were smiling. Why?
Oh, that's typical at every dispatch center. There's always a new policy and keystrokes. That's our biggest thing.
Okay. Was her attitude out on the floor important?
Sets the tone for the day on the positivity or negativity that's going to be going on. But she also did say that she knows it. Basically, that she knows it sucks for them, that they have to do this extra stuff, but we're going to have to, so let's figure out how we can do it easier. So she let them know that she realizes it's not happy times for them, that they have to do something new, but also that, we need to stick with it and get it done.
She could have just walked by and let them continue to complain about it, but she took the right approach and went up there, addressed it, and had conversation with them, which was important.
What if she just walked by, just continued walking by?
They would have continued to complain, and it would have festered and gotten bigger. And
even walking by without acknowledging their feelings sets the tone as well, because those employees would continue thinking, see, they don't care, they're not thinking about us. They walked right on by and didn't say anything.
Doesn't affect them, they don't care.
Do you think she really wanted to jump in there?
I bet that was hard.
But by asking for their feedback, she got a buy-in from them, and they also felt as though their opinions were part of the process as well. So it made them a little more adaptable to the policy change.
So do we have to explain everything we do as a supervisor?
But when you're adding new tasks for a dispatcher to do, It's also nice to know why we're doing it, to make it so, for me, if I know why I'm doing something, it helps me to understand it better and then make it easier for me to do it. If I don't know why I'm doing it, I keep forgetting. And I have to go back and look at notes and things because I don't know why I'm doing it, so it's not sinking in.
Okay. When would it be acceptable for me just to say, this needs to be done?
When there's a sense of urgency about the task completion.
If it's HR related or if it's, someone's personal employment record type thing, then you don't have to explain that.
If I'm put into a position where I really can't explain, is there some way we can work out the trust that if I don't explain, you give me the benefit of the doubt?
Or if you can't explain why, you can explain the goal. I can't tell you why, where this came from, this situation, but I can tell you the point of it is to accomplish this. That would make me feel better knowing it's not just a piece of paper I had to sign and now I do it.
The two supervisors in the beginning that were in the office, what if they had had that conversation on the floor?
Not good.
Why?
No one's going to support it.
Supervisors have to be united on especially something that's going to be a policy. Whether their personal opinions differ, whatever they decide before they walk out of that office, they need to stick together with that decision and back it for the department's sake. And you have to leave your personal opinions behind.
But how does that appear to you guys if a policy that comes down that's really difficult?
Just because she's backing the policy doesn't mean she doesn't understand the consequences of this policy and how it's going to affect them.
Does that mean a lot to you to have the supervisor understand that it's going to impact? So maybe as we communicate, I need to remember to say, I understand and mean it.
I agree that the supervisors, they should not have an argument or a discussion like that on the floor. That should be between supervisors, but acknowledging it's difficult or acknowledging that there's additional steps is not the same as openly saying, I disagree with this policy, and therefore, if I don't disagree with it, or if I don't agree with it, you don't have to agree with it. So acknowledging that there are these other steps or that, there's things we could maybe work to get it simplified, et cetera, I would have more trust in that supervisor. I would have more buy-in to them as a supervisor, that they understand, they're backing me, they support me, they understand what I have to do on the floor, and part of what they have to do as a supervisor, I would have more trust in them.
Okay. What about let's talk about the way she approached the conversation. Here you have 3 dispatchers that are having a semi-private conversation. She's not invited to the conversation, but she comes in. What do you think of her approach?
I think it's perfectly fine because they're having the conversation right there in the middle of everything. You've got to expect somebody's going to walk by and hear it.
What if she would have said, look, this is the way it is, and started yelling it at the dispatchers?
Then she'd have no buy-in on it.
There would be no buy-in. Okay. So even though we tend to be in a paramilitary organization, we really do still need to pay attention to the whys and the why we do things and the attitude of our peers, right?
Yeah, but you're also going to get a complete negativity going on if you just go out and say, this is what you're going to do, and you're going to do it now. The end. And walk away. Then you just are building the negativity. Yeah.
Did you catch the supervisor's look when she walked past them and stopped? Sometimes it's hard to check, but it's something that we need to do. Not just the supervisors, but also, staff. We need to be able to take a moment and check ourselves. And if she had raised her voice or if they had seen her roll her eyes or whatever, take time to apologize for that. You know, we talk about family. How often do we apologize to our family when we screw up?
Not enough.
How many times do we make amends to our house guests?
Supervisors not agreeing with policy happens every day in every organization in the state. Having conversations with your peers about it, complaining about it, completely authentic. Part of our responsibility as supervisors is to understand the policy, be able to articulate why it's needed, and enforce the policy.
I encourage my supervisors to have dialogue. And they may not always agree with something I've given them or a policy change. So I like that the two supervisors were sitting down sharing information.
The second choice that they made is when they walked by and heard employees complaining about this new policy that we know they aren't in agreement with, but they're on board because they have to represent management. And having that conversation in a way that provided collaboration by saying in a positive way, we have a policy, we're going to follow it. Perhaps there are some ways, some tools, we can make this easier on our staff. It's completely different than having a confrontational attitude about it. She was consistent with the values of being a leader and of being a supervisor. But I think it did two things. Not only did it empower employees, it empowered her. By making that a collaboration, she's now further invested in making sure that this policy, not only are we going to adhere to it, but it'll be an effective tool for us.
But it doesn't always have to be the supervisor to bring that conversation that way. If you see a group of people having some complaint fest over here, you got to be able to say, hey, you guys don't really need to sit there and complain about it. What are you going to do? And it comes back to some things you just can't change. It's just what it is.
A background on why it needs to change and how it's going to change and why it's necessary to be effective, I think is really important. And so when that's done, I think there's more buy-in from the floor staff, there's more buy-in from people that policy is affecting.
We don't know as a line staff what staff has to deal with, who also doesn't know what the city council or the hierarchy has to deal with. We all are part of this team. And if we try to remember that we're on the same team and there's reasons for things beyond our scope of understanding, and figure out a way to come to a conclusion together, it's more powerful than just being resistant.
But I think it's also good for dispatchers to see that dispatch supervisors have a really hard time sometimes as well. You know, it's not always clear cut. It's not always something that makes sense in the workflow. They get it. I think a lot of supervisors tend to want to wait until the perfect time to address something, or they would bring those individuals in one at a time. And then it becomes something that is a huge, so-and-so got in trouble and they're being talked to and the supervisor's got to schedule the time. It's just become such a big deal. And I love the fact that she kind of gathered herself and then she turned around and went over and addressed it immediately. And I just think a lot of things in our centers would be resolved more expediently and with less stress for all concerned. At the moment, sometimes is the best moment.
She's building that trust. The supervisor is building a trust where her employees feel comfortable because she's had that constant conversation with them. Short, but necessary, needed interaction to where they say, oh, I can talk to her. I know, she talks to me all the time.
If somebody recognizes a problem or recognizes an issue and brings it to you as a manager, welcome it. Listen to them. Ask that they give you options as well. If they have recognized it, they've already gone through all of those in their minds and they have options. Ask them about it.
When people know that their voices are being heard, not necessarily that you're doing things their way. I'm not talking about inmates running the asylum. I'm talking about the fact that you're creating a legitimate pathway for two-way communication, and that's be soliciting your input and you volunteering your input in a positive way. One of the more progressive ideas along that way is having your end user involved in the process from the beginning. This is the direction we're going as a department. It's going to affect, you identify what areas of the department it will affect, and you have someone from each area be a part of that process. In the end, you're getting exactly where you need to be, but everyone's voice is heard and it's implemented, and you have the buy-in from the employee. That's huge. It's huge to understand that regardless of your rank, you have value.
So dispatch centers, typically are going to be in police departments or sheriff's departments. We're a militaristic environment, quasi-militaristic. There's a chain of command. There seems to be a reluctance sometimes to talk to a supervisor, but I think you also need to recognize there are times where going to a manager is just fine. I think it's important that dispatchers keep an open line of communication with their immediate supervisors. As someone who's been in a management position for a number of years, I understand that there are times where decisions may seem random and they may not make a lot of sense to the line staff. So I personally have been, I've been asked about different circumstances by staff, and in situations where I either can't explain it because it's a confidential matter, maybe it's an HR type situation, maybe it violates somebody else's trust, or a procedure or something like that. And so typically what I will try to do is say something to the effect of, I can see where that's frustrating, I understand that that's difficult, please trust me, but I can't go into any more detail right now. And frankly, people are usually pretty okay with that. It's when they don't know and they're not hearing the information that it seems to cause the most duress and stress.
We've come to the end of our training. I'm Mark Bailey, and on behalf of the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, I would like to thank you for your participation and encourage you to take a moment to listen to the final thoughts from some of our subject matter experts who contributed to this program. Lastly, we'd like to encourage you to keep this discussion going. Take a step toward a happier, healthier, longer dispatching career. This course is designed to be facilitated in a group setting. Before conducting a group training session, you should review and become familiar with the material in this program. Open and print the facilitator guide and go through the program yourself before putting the course on for others. As the facilitator, your job is to engage your students in constructive, free-flowing discussion on the key learning points of this training topic. Use the tools provided in this program to stimulate critical thinking and situational awareness in the group by viewing the scenarios, expert interviews, and discussion videos. Questions and activities are provided to promote group interaction and discussion on the training topic. Customize the learning experience by applying your agency policy and procedures to the training concepts. Segments in this program accommodate shorter training periods, such as during roll call training sessions. Track your students' progress through the entire program. As the facilitator, you need to know that your students have gone through the material and sufficiently mastered the learning objectives. Once the students have successfully completed the program, submit your training roster to POST for CPT credit. Following this plan will help to create an environment for the debate of ideas, sharing of wisdom based on experience, and encourage a greater understanding of local policies and procedures. We wish you and your agency all the best in successfully implementing this program. This course is designed to be facilitated in a group setting. However, when that is not possible, here are some instructions for getting the most out of this training program so that you may receive continuing professional training or CPT credit. Obtain permission from your agency trainer or supervisor to view the course for training credit, and let them know you will be viewing the program. This will give them some time to review the course themselves and be prepared to discuss it with you later on. Open and print the student study guide so that you can take notes and fill out responses to the questions and activities. Think about how the training concepts presented apply to your agency policy and procedures. You may view the scenarios, expert interviews, and discussion videos several times to assist you in providing responses. Keep track of your progress as you complete the segments in this course. When you have finished the entire program, Inform the trainer that you would like to review the course with them. Send them your completed student study guide prior to meetings so that they have had a chance to review your responses. Scheduling a face-to-face meeting with your trainer is the best way to review your work on the course. If this is not possible, arrange a phone call meeting. But in either case, allow time to review and discuss your responses. Your supervisor or trainer may require additional work or feedback from you before giving CPT credit. They may want to evaluate your understanding of how the training points relate to your agency policy, for instance. It is their discretion in determining whether you have adequately completed the course. Following these instructions will give you the best opportunity not only to receive CPT credit, but to grasp the training concepts, benefit from the experience of others, and apply the training and experience to your local policy and procedures. We wish you and your agency all the best in successfully completing this course.
Oftentimes, you'll have sworn staff who they just don't understand. Where does this frustration come from? Where does this negativity? Why is this a Shark Tank? And what I give is the analogy of if you went to the academy and you were in patrol and you had to do patrol for 30 years, you never could work traffic, you could never work narcotics, you could never promote to detective, you could never promote to sergeant. How many people would sign up for 30 years in patrol? As a dispatcher, that's all you have. In small agencies in particular, there's no room for advancement. In larger agencies, even advancement is limited because the executive staff are all sworn. The frustration that comes into there is that your expertise are the people who do their job every day. We're really turning a blind eye to the fact that we have very talented people who can do a variety of things for our agencies and help break that pattern of nonstop stress without any outlets. We would no more have an officer work 30 years in the field on swing shift and graveyard, but it's okay for our civilian staff. It's not okay.
I think if you ask any dispatcher if something was going on in someone else's private life that the dispatcher knows, and that person in their private life sought help, whatever the help may be, most dispatchers, most people wouldn't blink an eye.
But it goes back to the dispatchers not wanting to appear weak. It's oxymoronic. It doesn't make sense, but it's ingrained in the culture, and the culture has to change.
The good news is that the research is being done. The good news is that we're talking about it. The good news is that we're recognizing that there is a first responder that is just as invested emotionally as the guys and gals in the field. And I feel very confident that at the end of this journey, we will come to a place where we're aware of our role, we're proud of what we do, and part of that pride is that we're strong enough to take care of ourselves. You know, people say, you need to think outside of the box. I think we need to build our own box.
We have a saying that we can eat our own. We could also take care of our own too, because nobody knows what we do but better than us.